I'm Ivy Barron, and I have a little studio called Requisite Pilates out of Austin, Texas.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. And is it just like a private studio? Do you do group classes? Is it like a broadcast center sort of deal?
I have a little home studio, a 100
Okay,
square foot office in my house for privates, and then I teach group classes online. So I'm in the process of building, I'm another one of those pandemic pivoters.
yes. Hi, how are you?
So, I mean, we're all pandemic pivoters really, but yeah, so I have group classes that I teach weekly and then a whole library of back classes.
Okay,
So we're calling
very
it an
cool.
online studio. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
were you doing in the studio before? Did you own a studio before? Were you working in places? Like, what was your thing? And Carissa's saying, "Hey neighbor, ever been out to New Braunfels? Is that
New
how you say it?
Braunfels.
Braunfels,
Yeah,
yeah.
New Braunfels. Yeah. Although I think my mom calls it New Brothels or something. But
New Braunfels.
but
Right.
yes, I have. Hi, Krista. Yes, we definitely need to get together because we are close.
Hmm.
Um, to answer your question, I did the independent contractor thing for years, renting out space. And then I think in 2014, I went to work for the Pilates Center of Austin. And I
Okay.
stayed there, yeah, through middle of the pandemic. And it was just that, deep, clear pool to kind of branch off on my own. So this is my
Okay.
first official studio.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It
Good.
is.
And
It was a long
I
time
was,
coming.
yeah, I was gonna say it usually is a long time coming. It's not, very seldom is it the I just graduated, let's go, let's open this. It's more like you have this little tug, and then there's always something that's like, "Mm, not yet, not yet, not yet."
Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide that now was the time?
Um, all right, I'm going deep right away. I, I've always felt that I sort of didn't fit. That
Okay,
even when people say, what do you do for a living? I'd say I teach Pilates, and then I'd like wait for it because I don't fit the mold. Like, oh,
really?
what's the feedback going to be? Oh, you know, you don't look like you teach Pilates or whatever. And
Mm.
so, um, I never knew how to talk about how I approached Pilates because it didn't have like trauma
Interesting.
informed didn't exist. Like this whole
Yes.
trauma informed, which I think is amazing
Hmm.
movement. I've been doing that for 15 years, but I didn't have a name for it.
A name for it.
Hmm. Um, and so, what I realized is specifically during the pandemic when I started to kind of spend more time on social media and really see what was happening in the Pilates
Hmm.
community at large, um,
Yes.
it was clear that it was like you said, that tug, like my voice needed to come out, and I was keeping myself really small and quiet
Yes.
because I didn't know how to talk about what I did. Um, and I think a combination of the world falling apart and um, and being like in my mid 40s to late 40s, I just got this like screw it. Like I don't need to
Yes.
explain myself to anybody anymore.
Yes.
And I'm gonna say this is what I do, this is what I offer. If I'm a good fit for you, awesome. If I'm not, you know, like we say in Texas, bless your heart. You just go do your thing.
Yes. I'm 47, by the way, so that mid 40s, I don't care thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I always wonder why I didn't get that like 20 years ago, because really it might have served me better then. But it's funny how you say that, because I hear it, right? Like you're just like that opinion. It's not that like, and you have a social work background too. So like you can analyze this all day about the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we don't have to cater to everyone else's opinion of us, but we're very aware of other people's opinion of us
Mm-hmm.
proactively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's true. I mean, the hyper awareness that comes with coming from like a social work or counseling background, um, it always is there, right? But then there's this like shift into, I don't know, it's like an owning who I am,
Mm-hmm.
just owning it. And
Yes.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That just to paint a picture for that hyper awareness, I've had some women who were athletes, like full scholarship runners who still run, who got pregnant, got married, have kids, stuff like that. And hearing them talk about their bodies as it's changing, not negatively or positively, but just the awareness that they have about their bodies as athletes going through a pregnancy is the same as me as a kind of like social awareness person recognizing the I just felt jealous right now. I just felt insecure right now. And like that same I see it happen in them and I'm like that's what I do in the psychological that same thing.
100%. Yep. But I also think it's a way of, for me, I'm going to make an I statement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a distractor. Like that's all happening up here. That's the
Yes.
way I distract myself is hyper analyzing everything, right?
Yes.
Rather than what I'm trying to facilitate for people is being more into your body and less
Right.
into the thinky parts. Yeah.
Right. Someone commented on my charter member of Overthinkers Anonymous comment yesterday. And just like, yeah,
I love it.
yeah,
Yep.
that's me.
Yeah.
But okay, so I mean, right out the gate, like you're like, okay, we're going deep here, right? Because there is no way around that thought of this is what I do and this is how I think I'm going to be treated when I say that. Were there times when that happened where people kind of gave you like a side look, like, you sure that's what you do, sort of thing? Or was that more in your head that was happening, gonna happen?
Probably more in my head. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Probably more in my head. I mean, realistically, because as you know, and as we know now in our 40s, that nobody's really thinking about us as much as we're thinking about us.
No one really cares. Right.
Nobody cares. And
Yes.
probably half the people that ask what I do are asking out of politeness and, just casual conversation. They're not
Wow.
thinking in that body, how disgusting. Like
They're not going there. Right.
they're not the mean, nasty person that lives inside of me with the nasty self-talk, right? That I
Mm,
have to
mm.
nurture and love these
And
days. But yeah.
nurture and love, not like strangle under and like smother. Like,
No, actually, I was talk about going deep. I have this new therapist.
okay.
She's talking about all these little, but it's really, I think about it all the time when I hear clients with the negative self, or oh, this is my bad side, or oh, I just can't do this, or oh, I
Mm.
used to do that, but now I can't do this.
Yes.
And the way that she described it is that instead of having this like inner child, which is lovely, that we have all these little children inside of us, or all these little helpers
Hmm.
that are stuck in a specific loop
Right.
wherever that trauma happened in your life, right?
Okay.
So for instance, the nasty person who's like, you know, how dare you call yourself a Pilates instructor because of your body looking like this?
Hmm.
She's just stuck. Like that helper is just stuck in that place. So if I nurture her and give her some love and acknowledgement, then she can like quiet down. Or if I say, look, you're awesome. I don't need you to be nasty anymore. Could you just have a seat over on this couch or whatever? And I'm going to go about my business.
Like, here's a popsicle. I'm gonna go take care of my stuff, and I'll come talk to you later.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, we can deal with this later, but right now this is not serving me, you know, in my business or in my personal life.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting, right?
Interesting. Well, I mean, just that notion of having compassion. Well, I guess I don't understand why this is so foreign to me because that is the way that I treat people. If someone is mean
Mm-hmm.
to me, I'm like, what is their backstory? What brought them to this place? This probably has nothing to do with me and probably with the seven things that happened to them before this situation, sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I have that compassion and just questions and understanding when something happens to me. But for that person, that little mean guy in that analogy you talk about in my head, I don't have that same level of compassion.
Right. Right. And I think, you know, going back to this concept of like what is trauma informed, and I do that because it's just a new catchphrase for me. I
It's
don't
sort of
really
right.
mean this. But I think that that's part of it is figuring out how to have compassion for all those little parts and pieces of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
is going to inform how we're able to receive people we work with. And
Yes.
there, you know, I can't tell you how many forums, Pilates forums that I've been on where people say, well, I'm not a therapist, so da 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 da. And
Mm-hmm.
that's absolutely true. You are not.
Right.
But you are in a power dynamic with somebody. You are putting springs on somebody's feet, their legs akimbo, which can be very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So if I feel like taking that time to have that compassion for yourself, unpack your own stuff, enables me to hold a space for people. It doesn't mean I'm therapizing them at
Mm-hmm.
all,
Right.
but being able to recognize facial expressions, body language, you know, hypervigilance, holding breath,
Yes.
and understanding
Apprehension.
that I have to address that from a place of compassion, not a place of, well, you just need to figure out how to breathe into your lower
True.
lobes or whatever, you
Right.
know?
Right. 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 No, it's true. I mean, that's that solution orientation is dangerous also in sales, right? Like I could just jump to the solution right now, but I really don't understand what the person's real need is, right?
Right, right.
When Chris and I were talking last week, and she asked me a question about a conflict, I'm just kind of reminded of that again now, where the individual I was having this conflict with comes from the dance background, and we've kind of lightheartedly talked about how nasty the dance industry can be, ballet and stuff like that, growing up. So this person had this sense of a threat, like I was trying to take his spot, take his lead dance spot when I took his idea and how do and when he realized that one, I don't come from the dance background, so I'm not competitive in that way. My competition gene is somewhere else. Um, and that it wasn't that. And then his guard went down and there was a trust that was built. Our relationship is actually richer now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sense of getting through that point of conflict from a place of misunderstanding to getting to a place
Mm-hmm.
of understanding and trust that makes the relationship richer. And
Yeah.
for those of you who just jumped into this deep, like mental health, psychological talk, I'm tying it back to Pilates right now. Our people, that's the exact same thing, just in a micro scale, right? It may happen within the course of one or two sessions where they're like, I can't do this. Let me walk you through this. Let me understand where that's coming from. Let's try it like this. And then we get there. And then from there, they trust you to suggest an exercise or to go here or to do this new thing or whatever it is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's all connected.
It's all connected. I mean, I had an incident, it's not an incident, but where I pushed somebody, which I rarely do, but it had everything to do with me and some kind of, I hit up against this person and their personality in that moment, and I pushed them too hard. And what I could have done was just lose that client and lose that relationship. But I stepped back and immediately called her after the session and was like, I am so sorry. Like,
Mm,
I was not listening to where you were. I was hearing your
yes.
words, and I was I was making decisions from my own ego place or whatever. And she totally heard that and met with the
Mm.
reason that I was getting upset was because I just felt so frustrated. And exactly, right now we have
Yes.
this new level of trust where we can start to do things that feel a little more challenging for her.
Yes.
Um, but she trusts me, right? Not to
Hmm.
push too far, to meet her exactly where she is, to have those conversations right at the edge of, do we need to stop, or do you want to try this
Yes.
again?
Right.
Yeah.
That for those of you who are watching, I don't know, just hands up if you identify with that, because like those are the tough conversations to have, because a lot of times when it comes to that point of conflict, people go out trying to win the argument as opposed to trying to enhance the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I just wrote down and met with, like the fact that she met that with, this is my side of the story, this is where I came from, as opposed to, yeah, and I'm canceling my membership and it's about time that you
Right.
apologize. Like, you know, like, it could have gone two ways, but I think they picked up on your sincerity in coming to say, let's make this right. um, Building trust like that is so key for these working relationships with our clients.
I had a yes, 100% yesterday. One of the practices now, because I tend to go touch,
Yes.
whatever, with physical cues. And I realized, like, I came in at this woman's sternum and clavicles, and and I didn't ask permission. And that's something that I'm
Mm.
really trying to work on, is consent and permission, and is it
Yes.
okay? Is my pressure okay? All of that. And she said, Ivy, in the short time, I trust you so implicitly. And she's a therapist, so that's also, she's able to kind of name it. But
Articulate that. Yes.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it meant so much to me that she was basically like, you have my consent across the board. If you feel like it's
Mm.
necessary to give me a physical cue, there, you never have to ask me. And that
Wow.
felt really important.
Yes, I would be like, let's go. Like, there's so much that we could do now, because we could just like, we could skip the formalities and just get to work.
Hmm.
No, that's so cool. Do you work with a lot of gentlemen? Do you have guys that come into your studio or?
I wouldn't say a lot,
Okay.
but definitely currently, do I have any private men clients right now? No, I don't. But usually, the men who tend to come, at least show up initially, are usually injured,
Okay.
or they're a little bit older, and they understand that whatever they've been doing previously is no longer serving them, and they are ready to try something new.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So normally how do those guys come in? Is it a referral? Is it like the spouse of one of your existing members or?
Sometimes they have found me. And then usually it's interesting with the men. I hadn't really thought about this. They'll find me and then leave me and then find me again. It's like maybe we met, through, I used to work at a pelvic floor therapy office. And so I was the
Okay.
Pilates person, and there was a
Yeah.
therapist there. Anyway, and then years later, that one of the men that I found that I worked with there came back and found me. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it happens in the same way that I find women clients, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any difference in your approach working with men, the way that you introduce them to this Pilates work, or like your approach type thing, or is it the same kind of template that you work through?
I just meet people where they are. I mean, really,
Hmm.
honestly, gender, sex. I really just people where they are.
Yeah.
A lot of the men that I have worked with have been injured in like a CrossFit kind of situation. And so,
Okay.
you know, there are times, and I do this with women who come from that world too, where because my work can be, I don't want to call it gentle because it's not that. I mean, it's everything, but it's a little on the like slower, more mindful side. And so
Right.
if somebody comes from me to me with, you know, an athletic background, or
Yeah.
I
They just did
make
Tabata
sure that
for an
they
hour
feel
and they're looking, yeah.
exactly. I make sure
Right.
that they feel challenged, and
Mhm.
then we do the same exercise and find something new in it from my perspective. Or in this
Something
body,
interesting
sometimes
to you. Yeah.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
been known to like do a really challenging exercise and just talk through it and then have them hop up and do the same
Yes.
exercise. And they're like, like, yeah, so
I
perhaps, you
love
know,
those moments. Yep. Just to
yeah,
cool them off a bit, right? Just to get some respect for the work.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm sure we've all done that. So one of the questions I always ask people is quite simply, who is your ideal client? Who are you most excited about working with? Or I put it this way, who would you train for free? The person walked in the door and they're just like, I need this, this, and this. You're like, let's go.
Um, hmm. Who would I train for free? Honestly, somebody who really needs movement in their life and
Okay.
can't access it financially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I don't do a whole lot of free, but I
Hmm.
definitely have after you know Teresa from Pilates Bars and Jams.
Yes.
I took a workshop with her, and she laid out how she's able to offer scholarships,
Hmm.
and that was so helpful because I wanted to be able to, you know, create an accessible practice as much as
Yes.
possible, but I also need to make a living. So
That's the sweet
there's,
spot.
yeah, that's the sweet spot. So, and you know, Pilates is it's so grossly elitist and expensive, and also that's why I do it, right? So it's like not the elitist part, but the expensive part.
Right. Yeah. That's real
So
talk. Yeah.
that's a long answer to a short question. So I don't really my ideal client is somebody who is a seeker, who really is, you know, in it to learn something a little bit more deep about movement, or a little more about themselves and their process, or
Yes.
about pain that they're experiencing and
Right.
reframing that pain into something, into information, for instance. So it's the people who I can tell you who are not my ideal clients, who
Sure.
aren't there yet, right? Who are just sort of shut down and are
Yes.
there just purely rocket.
Hmm.
We're not a good, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you ever have people who just are clearly not a good fit stick around anyways? And you're like, why are you still renewing? Like, why are you still have those moments? Not in a bad way, but you're like,
yeah,
I'm just baffled that you're sticking around for this. Like, this is
yeah,
like, yeah, that's
yeah.
so
But
funny.
I also find that those are the people that I have the most to learn from, honestly.
Hmm. Say some more about that.
uh, well, just in that it's a great from I'm thinking of I'm not going to obviously
No,
I'm not going to say who, but
expose someone.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, but there's just times where I think like, oh, okay, here we go. And what I get to do for those hours is practice what I preach, right? Is really going into more of a listening, curious place
Hmm.
instead of, you know, whatever else is happening. Sit in silence sometimes during a session and just wait for them to take over the lead instead of that feeling of exhaustion sometimes, of feeling like you need to fill, especially on a virtual
Mm-hmm.
setting where you feel like you have to fill space
Yes.
all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and so for me, I feel like those clients are who sharpen all of my skills.
Yes. Because you have to, exactly. You're applying them in the least ideal situation sometimes, right? So,
Yeah, and I can't go into autopilot. That's impossible.
right.
Yes, stillness. I see
Yeah.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly
Absolutely,
that.
Tammy.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's well, even like we were saying, like a title was listen more deeply, and like, and I was asking you before we came on air, just like what's your message for your people, and you're saying for clients to listen more deeply, and also for movement specialists to listen to our clients more deeply, right? So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that all this ties into that, and how do we cultivate a space where clients can listen to themselves more deeply?
Um, I think for me, I mean, I can say what I do, which is I ask a lot of questions. And
Mm.
I ask a lot of questions so that they can start asking those questions themselves.
Yes, after the session
Um,
sometimes.
right.
Yeah, like in
Or
everyday life, right?
eventually,
Eventually. Yeah.
right. Or
Yeah.
eventually during the session,
Right.
right? That they start to catch it. Well, I'm not going to do this because, my left toe is telling me that I need to do
Yeah. Right.
something else. So I think it's a matter of like, um, what's the word I'm looking for? This is my 48-year-old brain. Modeling, that's the word.
Oh, okay.
But
Yes.
modeling, curiosity. So oftentimes when I teach, which I know is kind of a controversial way to teach, is I talk about what I'm noticing in my own body as
Mm.
I move,
Yes.
because I think that sparks a new way for you to listen to your own body. Because if I just say, does this hurt?
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? Like, hurt is very relative.
Yes.
If you're in chronic pain,
Yeah. The answer is like
you're
no.
always
You're always
hurting.
hurting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, or if you've had a baby, like, hurt is really relative. You're like, your leg could fall off, and you're like, nope, I'm fine. All good here.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So, modeling, which goes back to doing your own work. We think of ourselves as movers, that um, we're so in our bodies, and
Mm.
we're not always. We're not always.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's too funny. That's true.
it's
It's true.
true.
Yeah. I mean, like, especially this week,
Yeah.
like, I made a post about that. Like, just like you hear all these things that are happening in the world, and it's like, we can't, like, I live in Mississauga, which is outside of Toronto, which is
Mm-hmm.
a long way from Texas. I mean, it's still a distance from Buffalo. It's far from San Francisco, where California, where like these shootings happen. Like, I can't do anything about them. I can just get
Yeah.
frustrated with them, and then I have to go and take care of my next client. So what can I do but take care of myself and just be available?
Mm-hmm.
But have I?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. There, I taught a class last week where, and I posted it actually after the fact on Instagram because I felt like it was important, um, where I just broke down. Like I couldn't,
Mm.
the class started and I just couldn't in that moment. I just felt the past 2 years, the Buffalo and Uvalde and all of it, all of it in that moment. And so I just named it. I was just like, here we are. My heart is so, so heavy right now.
Yes.
So let's take a moment and see if we can arrive, because I know that movement
Yes.
is so healing for all of us, but I need to be present. I mean, I'm saying it now way more succinctly than I did
Yes.
in the video. When I was teaching, I was like, but these are all the things I was thinking.
Right. It's eloquent now.
Yeah, it's so eloquent.
Uh,
Oh, thank you, Shanti.
that's sweet.
Yeah, so that, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I probably lost people. I probably lost people over the last 2 years for maybe being a little more radical than they were ready to hear, and that I'm good with that.
Right.
Because I feel like especially now it's so important that we're just not silencing ourselves for our physical health.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just about, it's about all of it. Like if I'm going to move in a healthy way for myself, I can't be quiet, you know?
And Shanti says you gained some followers too.
Aw, thanks, Shanti.
I like what you just said a minute about like about arriving. I never like said it that way, but I do ask my clients if they're here yet.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like, are we here? Yes. Okay, let's begin. Right? Like that sort of thing. So there's that same notion, but like arriving just sounds so succinct in terms of I like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, there's always a transition time from when they walk in the door to when we start moving. And sometimes I have some clients who I need to talk for like 15 minutes.
Yes.
And I know that that's problematic for some instructors. I feel like it's just clearing energy. We need to clear it so that we can get down to business. And then we have this like great 45 minutes of really meaningful movement.
Yes.
But if I immediately try to take them out of those conversations because we're here to move people, it's not benefiting either. We're hitting up against one another.
Yes.
And, you know.
Then you have to call them the next day and apologize.
Right, exactly. And who's got time for that, really?
Who's got time for that? Yeah, exactly. Can you talk about your social work background, my fellow social work meets movement person?
Yeah. I found Pilates at the same time that I was finishing up my master's degree.
Okay.
So I worked with kids in the system. I counseled kids and families in the system for a little while. And I worked with pregnant and parenting teenagers.
Okay.
Which was a lot for somebody at that who in my early 30s and who didn't know jack from raising myself, let alone but that's an aside. But what I realized after I found, because I wasn't, I had a yoga practice and I had movement in my life, but I wasn't a dancer and I wasn't a mover. I wasn't a team sports person. It just wasn't my jam. And so when I found Pilates, it was this, it was really just a huge aha, like, this is the thing I've been looking for, where I feel connected and I feel strong and but I also feel open and right. And so as I was doing my teacher training and working with people and finishing up my master's degree, it dawned on me pretty quickly that it's the same work. It's just that people say thank you and really want to be there. They're making, a choice, an investment to show up. Where I am.
I call the people that walk into their office, a doctor's office, and the doctor says, you're 47, your dad died at 48, you need to start exercising, as my court-ordered people. And they're the ones that are least likely to be invested in the movement, invested in the process, to challenge, to, you know what I mean? Like, and then
Mm-hmm.
their company expense piece is covered, so they don't bat an eye at the price and all the things, right? And you're like, why are we even here?
Right.
But then, and then by contrast, you have others who are so appreciative, and it makes such a difference in their life. And for me too, that was exactly why I made that pivot, where I was full-time social work, part-time personal
Mm-hmm.
training, and then the personal training person I was working with decided to go back to school, and it's just like I basically can inherit your whole book of business, and then if that tanks, I can go back and fall back on my degree, and that was in 2000, right? So I'm still
Right.
here
Right. Right.
because it's
Yeah.
scratching the same itch. You're making a difference in people's lives still, and that's ultimately why I got into helping fields in the first place, right? So,
Exactly right. It was like this, I knew, there was this nebulous, like, I want to help people.
right, right,
So,
yeah,
right. And so social work is a great avenue for that because you can make the choice to help people on a more grand scheme and go into more of
yes,
a political, or you can work with clients one on one and be in a counseling situation. There's so many options in
yes,
that world. And so I chose it, but not because I was like driven to do social work. I just wanted
hmm,
to, like you said, I just wanted to help people.
yeah,
And I feel like the feedback that I get from people that like you said, it scratches that itch, you
yes,
know, it
yeah,
scratches that
absolutely.
itch.
That I love that the helping people baseline nebulous thing out there is that resonates with me. And when I did my talk at Brink, the last Brink that Jenna Zafino put on, my
Mm-hmm.
topic was know your why, but own your how.
Hmm.
And it spoke to that. Like we get to this place where, okay, I've narrowed down that helping people is my why and why I'm going to do this job, whatever it is. But then we still have to figure out what the how is. Because your how
Right.
could be social work, your how could be working in shelters, your how could be working with abuse or this or that, or the other, or it could be in fitness. And you could, I've had people on here who came into fitness because when they were young, their dad decided to put them in personal training instead of putting them with a social worker, put it with a counselor, right? And then she
Right.
really looked up to this person who was in fitness and decided that was going to be her career. And then from personal training went to Pilates. And now she owns a studio and she's doing all the things because of this person. And that was her how, right? So
Right.
when you lean into that how and do that really well in your way, unapologetically in your way, I think you're in a good spot.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that even fits for just the microcosm of Pilates in general, right? I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
have people that are really glued to classical, regimental, and I think that's amazing. I'm not
Yeah.
in an argument with anyone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you do you, boo. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think circling back to the original, like the beginning of our conversation around, even just owning that this is what I'm offering. It's Pilates
Yes.
informed movement that comes from a non-judgmental place. It's trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and it's this, it's that. It doesn't look like, what Martin offers. And that's awesome. Come see if you're
Right.
fit, right?
Yep.
Instead of me as an instructor, what I did for many years was like trying to figure out, fit into a box that wasn't my
This box or this
box.
box or this box. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
for you. I love how you phrase that, like plies informed movement. Like that's, yeah. What's wrong with that?
Nothing. I like it.
Nothing.
Because here's the
Right.
thing, most people aren't walking in off the street knowing what Pilates is anyway.
Exactly.
It's dancers, but it's also us in the industry that are so weird about,
Hmm.
what it needs to look like. And
Brands and looks and yeah, exactly.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
I don't know what
Again,
brand.
no time for that.
Right. Exactly. The best analogy I think it was Brent Anderson was on here. Is like I don't know what brand of tool my dentist use. I don't know what brand of
Right.
drill he uses. I don't know what brand of light
There it
he
is.
has, or I
Yeah.
don't know. Can you fix my tooth or not? Can you fix my back or not?
Yeah.
Can you help me with my performance or not? That's why we're here.
Yep. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. So, do you feel like you need to scratch that itch when it comes to community work, social work? Do you still have does that still have some expression in your life now, or is it just all fitness movement type stuff?
Um, you know, it is all fitness, but it's not all fitness. Right? I mean,
Yes.
for me, I've always, even when I was like in social work school and we had these conversations of like what avenue, what's your how in the world of social work,
Yes.
I always understood that for me, I worked with individuals and trusted that trickles and waves
Yes.
outward.
Right.
So what I try to do on that same level is make sure that I am speaking consciously, making sure that, you know, I'm always striving to make sure that my business is coming from an anti-racist lens, right? That it's inclusive, and that's a process.
Right.
Because we're all unpacking all of our junk that we've all internalized. And so that's where my social work piece comes in, I think, is again, modeling inclusive language, modeling gender non-specific language, those kind of things. Making posts, as a business that are political, because personal is political, and owning that and saying, this is who I am. Again, adios if I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. All good.
Yeah.
So that's where, but I like my little movement practice. I love moving people. I really do. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Any partnerships with any other like studios or people in your immediate area? Like obviously you have a new friend, Carissa, in her town, but
you just broke up a little bit. Did you say any partnerships?
Yeah, like who's like any other studios like in your immediate area that you work with, or are there any?
Not right now. I do really well kind of on my own. Like I said, I worked with the Pilates Center of Boston for 4 years, and so I have wonderful friends that I've made and colleagues that I've made through there, but dig doing my own thing. I'm starting to build relationships with some counseling groups that work with eating disorders and fat phobia and health at every size, and those groups.
Just layer movement into their programs.
Yeah. Because it's hard to walk into a place and not feel safe or seen. Right.
It's also, from a business perspective, it's also hard to get those programs integrated into their programs. So it's like, it's good that you're building those. We have to cultivate those relationships and just nurture them so that there's enough trust that they can say, I'm going to trust you with my people. Yeah. So that we can all help our community, right?
Yeah. And I think, I was just looking at the time. I only have a few minutes because I do have a client at 10. But I think, going back to Joseph Pilates, even, like, what did he want more than anything else?
Physical culture.
He's problematic, but he wanted to be recognized and he wanted to be seen in the medical community. And I think that we're all still building those relationships. And I honestly feel like there is, these Gen Zers and these millennials are like, are really just, I get so much inspiration from them because they've got boundaries around all of that business. No, here's what I need. I need a comprehensive group of people around me to support my physical body, my mental health. And so I feel like that's where we're shifting towards. And
Absolutely.
those relationships are like opening up a little more easily now because people are asking for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are applied to the Sparrow Collective is a great resource out of San Marcos. She has a great yoga a lot with eating disorders. So I screenshot that for you too, Ivy. So
Cool.
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much
Thank
for your
you.
time. This has been a fun chat, and it just flew by. And I apologize to everyone in the chat if we got too geeked out on the mental health social work.
I know, I love it.
Me too. So sorry, not sorry. And,
yeah, really.
Yes. But thank you. So I'll message you afterwards, and I'm going to I'll repost this and I'll set it up so you can share it or grab sound bites from it and just use it
Awesome.
how you please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Martin. That was really fun.
My pleasure. You did great first live.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Let's do it again.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Bye.